up, I would like to introduce Miss Andrea Engel from the World Bank Group and IFC. Put your hands together, please.
Good morning. It's a real pleasure for me to be here today. Thank you for the invitation, first and foremost. So, as was mentioned, my name is Andrea Engel. I am the UK country manager for the World Bank Group. I was invited here today to talk to you about the World Bank Group's work in agriculture, which is obviously a priority sector for us. But I thought, because, you know, the MDB world, the development finance world, we kind of live a little bit in a bubble, and we throw around a lot of acronyms, and oftentimes we go to events, we speak, and then I think most people probably don't understand half of what we say. So today I thought, actually, I'm gonna try to unpeel this onion a little bit and try to be, hopefully, as practical and comprehensible as I can be. So before jumping into the agriculture topic, I thought I'd explain a little bit to you about, and actually I don't need my glasses for this, about, you know, who the World Bank Group is, and actually some of the reforms that we are undertaking that, you know, we aim to actually really increase our impact in Africa and in all the countries that we work in. And I'm sure all of you have heard of the World Bank. Yes, good. But you know, actually the World Bank Group, we are 5 institutions, and we don't always, you know, talk about all 5. So I thought I should do that because the reforms we are doing is actually to get these 5 institutions to work better together. We have on the public sector side IBRD and IDA that do government lending in middle income and low income countries, which normally is referred to as the World Bank. But we also have private sector institutions within the group, IFC that is a financier, MIGA that does political risk guarantees and other sort of guarantees, and ICSID, which is Investor Dispute Resolution Tribunal that we have as well. So the reforms that I mentioned, actually what they're trying to do is to get the group to work much more together. And not to go too much into the detail of the current context in the world, I'm sure everybody reads the newspapers, but in the development finance world, obviously what we are witnessing are countries that are, you know, with rising debt levels, and that is obviously a big concern for us, the sustainability of public debt. At the same time, we are seeing reducing ODA, so reducing financing from, you know, traditional donors across the world. We have seen development budgets cut in many countries. So in this context, you know, for us the priority is really to say we need to tap all that unspent, the pots of money that are sitting here, for instance, in the City of London, institutional investors, pension funds. How do we bring all that kind of financing into emerging markets, given the context in which we live, right? So as part of that, our priority in the World Bank Group is really now our North Star, as we call it, is creating jobs. We feel that it is kind of seems like an obvious issue, but it's everything that we do for, and you will see, I will logically come to the agricultural sector soon. But when you look at within the next 10 to 15 years, 1.2 billion young people are reaching adulthood in emerging markets, in developing countries. And if you look at the trajectory of job creation, however, right now only 30% of those will actually find jobs once they reach adulthood. So, you know, this is, well, you can refer to it as a ticking time bomb for many, many reasons. But obviously, jobs bring dignity, bring income, support communities. So this is how we are now looking at how can we get the whole World Bank Group to do, you know, to work and incentivize and help create jobs. And again, the other thing that we observe is that obviously as countries develop, you see a shift for much more initially job creations through the public sector, but what we want to foster is job creation through the private sector, which is actually obviously the most sustainable model. Excuse me. And how we're doing that, yeah, sorry. I have to say, I'm a little bit sick today as well, okay. So I apologize. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. So we have created our 3-pillar strategy, and that is to work across the group, so from the public to the private sector, to focus on infrastructure and skills, the business-friendly environment, and how to mobilize more investment into developing countries. And this is now how I come to agriculture, but I wanted to give you this context because it is very important in defining how the World Bank Group looks at the world right now and what we prioritize. Because again, I said, the days of abundant development, coffers in developing countries, those days are over. We have gone back, looked at all our sectors, and identified the following 5 as priority sectors in terms of their capacity for job creation. One is infrastructure, healthcare, tourism, value-added manufacturing, and finally, agribusiness. So this does not mean, obviously, that we will not work and continue to work in all the other sectors that we work, but we are developing specific initiatives on these sectors that get the group to work together. For instance, on infrastructure, I don't know if you've heard the M300 initiative launched by the World Bank Group with the African Development Bank. This is to connect 300 Africans to electricity by 2030. So we recently also launched something similar for the agriculture sector. That's why I thought I start with this context, as it explains a little bit how we approach the world right now. So, coming to the issue of agribusiness, why we have selected it is obviously it accounts to about 40% of jobs in emerging markets, and it's critical. And I don't need to tell you, you all know this, but it's a critical role it plays in feeding the world population. So for Africa, and you all know this much better than I do, but you have all the right ingredients, right, to be a world leader in agriculture. You have 60% of the world's unused and fertile land, and you could boost yields in land already farmed. Yet, what we are seeing is that the continent continues to be a net importer of food, and an estimated 140 million people still continue to face food insecurity. So agriculture, thus, is priority for its job-generating potential, but just for its own sake and everything it contributes in terms of development. And when we talk about eliminating poverty and tackling agribusiness, we cannot do that without talking about farmers, and of course smallholder farmers, which is really 70% of the food supply is provided by smallholder farmers in Africa. And there we need to tackle issues such as limited access to credit, poor infrastructure, and more structure, education, etc. And then we work to mobilize investment into the sector and into Africa through IFC investment and meager guarantees. And last week, for those of you that follow the work of the World Bank Group and IMF, we had what is called the annual meetings, where the world's finance and development ministers descend upon Washington, and we basically discuss strategy for the World Bank going forward. And last week, we launched our new flagship program for the agri-sector called Agri-Connect. So watch this space. As part of that, we have also pledged to double our annual financing to about 9 billion by 2030, and to mobilize an additional 5 billion from the private sector across the World Bank Group. And how we will deliver this program is obviously through partnerships. So again, we have partnered on Agri-Connect with the African Development Bank, with IFAD, with IDB, which is focusing on Latin America, with the private sector. For instance, Bayer is going to also support us. And through the different elements I mentioned earlier, so investments, reforms, and finally mobilizing investment. And just to give you one example of, I hope I was somehow comprehensible. I might have still been a little bit up there, so I thought I'll give you one example how this actual group, how the group would come together. And for that, I chose a project that we did recently in Sierra Leone. And so this was a project that was IFC-led initially to support onion farming. And it took us, as IFC, it was what we call an upstream engagement that took 5 years, where we worked with the company to improve agronomy, yield improvement, corporate governance, and all the other elements that you would need also to attract investment. Our MEGA colleagues also supported related FDI that came into the project through political risk guarantees, and our public sector arm helped on certain regulatory reforms that had to be done on the government side. And so we ended up investing 20 million in this first large-scale farming operation of 500 hectares. And the aim is that it will eventually make Sierra Leone self-sufficient in onions. So this is just one example that was recently done, but I hope it brings it home a little bit more. So, and then finally, and I think the opening remarks had referred to this, why is the World Bank Group, why do we have an office in London? You might wonder why, we should maybe all be based in Africa. But, and I hope you will agree when I explain why we have a footprint here in London. I already kind of alluded to it earlier, but obviously we also want to be the bridge. We want to be the bridge that facilitates, the engagement of UK investors, try to mobilizing capital that is sitting in the city, working with insurance companies, reinsurers, investors, financial institutions, etc. So actually we're proud to say that in the last year our investment, so this is taking UK government business into emerging markets, that grew by about 200%. So right now we have about just under 5 billion invested with UK companies in emerging markets. Also for MEGA, so MEGA is our guarantee arm. The UK is the largest investment country, so most of the guarantees are issued to UK entities. And then finally, also I want to say a word on procurement, and maybe we can come back next time and tell you a little bit about our procurement opportunities, because we've just undertaken a big reform of World Bank Group procurement that was known to be quite heavy, and we have now 30% local content requirements, and other amendments and changes that were made to procurement policy to just make it easier. So we will be reaching out also to UK companies interested in bidding on World Bank projects. So with that, I will stop here. Thank you so much for listening to me. I think we have time for questions anyway still. So you can let me know if I wasn't clear, but please take the opportunity to ask questions. What I also wanted to say is that we are here in London. We have World Bank, IFC, and MEGA staff based in London. And our job really is to interface with you and anyone that wants to work with us or learn more about what we do. We engage with universities, we engage with the private sector, we engage with the government, but we are really there to be an interlocutor to anyone that wants to find out more about the World Bank Group. So with that, thank you so much. And thanks. Happy to take any questions you might have. Do you need this? No, I have this one.
Fantastic speech. I've always been very, very interested in what the organisation does. Do you have a particular focus for projects that involve underutilised sectors like women empowerment in Africa? Do you have projects, because in the room there is a number of charities and large groups that are seeking development funding. What is the perspective from the bank?
Okay. Do I need to? Oh, this one? Oh, okay. So in women empowerment, of course, gender is kind of core to what we do. Actually, the World Bank Group does so much that I can't possibly mention all of it because we would be here for several days. So I tried to just select a few key points. But we work very closely. Again, you need to look at us as an institution that works on the public and private sector. So on the public sector side, of course, we have gender strategies. We work with governments on different policy issues. We have a report which I recommend to everyone interested in the issue that is called Women Something and the Law, but actually where we look at regulation across all countries and how actually they impede the role of women in society. So there's research, there's policy. On the IFC side, we have this on many of our projects. For instance, when we invest in financial institutions, this is our way to reach SMEs. We have many credit lines that go for women entrepreneurs. We work with financial institutions actually to help them kind of start serving the sector. Now, when it comes directly to funding for civil society, and sorry, I took a long way around, and I think that was your question. I can follow up. I mean, I have to be very honest that there are different programs that come and go that are kind of more competitive. Also, actually, there are quite a few UK CSOs that are working on more operational NGOs that work on our projects. So when we give, for instance, an IDA loan to a country, that country will procure certain services. So that is another way of coming in for civil society. But I can follow up if there are any other. Sometimes the World Bank launches certain programs where we look for certain expertise. So I can share that with you when that comes up. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I was wondering, are you focused only in agriculture or other businesses? And also, usually it's really hard to get funding, quite complicated and a lot of criteria. Obviously, I understand it's about money, but I want to know if there is any easy way, easy access. Of course, everything has to be in place. Is that possible also as well? Or my main question is are you focused only on agriculture in Africa or other sectors?
Of course. So, sorry, yeah, that's an important question. We work across all sectors. So we work from infrastructure that entails everything from hard infrastructure, roads, bridges, to human capital, so education and social issues and health, agriculture, manufacturing, where again it's everything, tourism, health, retail, etc. So many sectors. And I heard you earlier presenting yourself, and I know you are from the fashion world. We even are now working on developing financing for the creative sectors, which our CEO is actually Makta Diop. He comes from Senegal, and when he joined IFC, and again, sometimes I speak as World Bank Group and sometimes as IFC, but he was very clear that we needed to develop specific support for the creative sector. Now, is it easy to obtain financing from the World Bank Group? I don't think so. I'm sorry, I cannot tell you that it's necessarily easy, just because, we are a public institution. So we are funded through, government money. So everything we do has to follow. We are quite thorough in terms of our processes, and also, although we are development, we still have the name bank in the name. So, there are certain things that make us differentiate us from a normal bank in the sense as our risk appetite, and we are really supposed to support the sectors or the countries where the private capital cannot go yet or is not comfortable in going. We're not there to replace the banks. So we do longer tenors, we can do, we have different technical assistance and different things that we can bring to a project that maybe a kind of mainstream commercial bank wouldn't bring. But yeah, I wish I could tell you that it would be easy.
But then how does the startups access these funds? Because it's really hard, there is a lot of startups,
Yes.
I live there and I have a business there.
Yes. So this is also a very good point. And actually, right now we're going through a new strategy cycle for IFC, because we have realized that until now, and I will come to the startups, but let me start by the small enterprises and entrepreneurs and smaller companies, that we have a tendency to focus, rightly so, I think, many times I've told, you focus too much on large companies. But obviously just the cost of doing a project means that when you have two, you will choose the one that, will change the life of 500 million people versus maybe 10. So sometimes we have to do trade-offs, right? But so there is a big exercise in-house going on about how we can be more relevant for SMEs, because we were used to finance SMEs directly, and then we realized the cost of doing that to the institution. It costs us the same to do a 100,000 loan as a 20 million loan, just because the processes are the same, etc. So we have done a lot through banks. So we channel our money through commercial banks. But now we are actually thinking, what other vehicles could we come up? So there might be some developments there. When it comes to startups, we do invest in kind of startups, not at the very, very early stages, but we do work there with different programs, business angels, etc., to help them develop. And then we come in a little bit at a later stage, but we do have quite significant work across the startups across all regions. Again, not completely new ones, so you will, yeah.
I'd just like to quickly add a point there. So in terms of support for startups, we're thinking about the local enterprise agencies. Yeah. I mean, the UK, I've done a lot of work around that. So the local enterprise agencies in our local economies, 80% of the businesses are individuals and micro businesses. So you mentioned about infrastructure. So is there the support for that local infrastructure, and it may be public and private partnerships, business support, that sort of world, because that's the only way you're going to reach the people in their neighbourhoods. And in the future, sustainable livelihoods are based on where people live in their neighbourhoods and the local communities that support the infrastructure and the development that you mentioned earlier on.
Yes.
So it's bringing the institutions down in the neighbourhoods. So I think that's the most important that we're all thinking about at the moment when we talk about inclusion, because you're talking about a whole mass of people historically being financially excluded, and the transformation is only going to come from where people live. And those micro individual entrepreneurs need to be connected to local infrastructure institutions. So that's where we want the larger scale bodies to start to support those structures for the future.
Yes, this is a very fair point. And this is also something that is evolving, but we already are. So one thing I mentioned is on the procurement processes, that we now need to have 30% local content. So that is one opportunity for local construction, like if it's a civil works project, for local construction companies and local workers to be engaged in our programs. Then when we are, as IFC for instance, investing in large infrastructure projects, in mines, etc., we do work to ensure that the supply chain for certain aspects of those projects is a local supply chain, right? We want to replace imports of whatever it might be for that project. It could be anything from food to laundry services. I mean, it looks like, but these are the kind of local businesses that we bring in. We have also started working, by the way, which not many people know, in refugee camps, because you see some of the camps where there are refugees have been there for decades. So we also realized, and we do this with UNHCR, that actually there is a whole entrepreneurial culture thriving there too, and that because of their legal status do not necessarily have access to finance, etc. So we have developed programs there too to see how can we support the local entrepreneurs, because on these camps you see everything from local financial institutions to mechanics to different small restaurants. So there's different ways that we intervene there. But I hear you, absolutely, that we need to make sure that our projects are inclusive. Thank you.
Our final question.
Thank you. To a large extent, you answered, my questions in your responses, but I just want to add to it. You talked about, I know you talked about, trade-offs when you have, due to limited, capital to finance most of these projects. But, when you also talk about 40% agricultural, in the job market and all of that. So I wanted to also understand that out of this 40% that you say agricultural sector is providing within the job market, most of it, is actually being provided by, the SMEs. So I believe SMEs should also be, a focal point of whatsoever, the World Bank Group is also doing within the African continent, especially within the agri, business ecosystem. So what I wanted to ask initially was to say that, okay, do we have a structure, like a procedure from the World Bank to the SMEs level? How do we connect? I don't know the broad objective of the Agri-Connect that you talked about, but I would like to understand how we can plug into it. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, so again, this was just launched last week, but the idea is definitely one very important pillar of that work is to actually support smallholder farmers. We do realize that they play a key role in agriculture, and I hope I'm answering your question. So there are different ways that we are working on supporting digital tools. One way of accessing weather information, crop information, etc., is through digital tools. That's one way of doing it. We help support cooperatives. So we work directly with cooperatives to, strengthen everything from their operation to try and get them financing. So there are different ways that we will work, and that the kind of the SME and the micro part certainly being part of that. If you are now based, you're sitting, I don't know what country you're from, but Nigeria. If you are in Nigeria, the best way actually to is that the other thing I should have mentioned is that we are extremely decentralized, because we are definitely realize that you cannot do developments. Our headquarters are in Washington, sitting in Washington. We need to be in the field. So we have local offices in most countries across Africa, and I think that is always your best entry point to start discussing how we can support your activities locally. So we usually, and in particular in a big country like Nigeria, I am pretty sure there will be several agricultural specialists based in the country office. So we have country offices. I can share the contacts, but also you can very easily find them online. We have World Bank and IFC, and then MEGA, they have smaller teams, but they always have regional teams based in the country. I mean, I'm pretty sure there should be someone in Nigeria too, just because of the size of the office. But that is always the best way to go locally, or through the London office, of course, if you're UK based.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Sorry, just one word. I apologize because I have to go catch a train very soon. But any of you that want to reach out, you can reach me, for instance, via LinkedIn. I reply to messages.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you.
that was a
Hopefully for
wonderful
bit longer,
start.
yeah?